with a million lights. It's coming up to 6:30 here on 94.9 Rhema Central Coast. Don't forget, these 3 days we're really sort of encouraging you to donate and sort of invest and partner with us as we journey along with Rhema Central Coast. So we do need funds, of course, to run any operation, as you know, these days. So we are asking listeners to support us in that way by giving us a ring on 4367. I'll start that one again. 4367 4042. 4367 4042. Or you can donate securely at our website at rhema.cc. And as I speak, our tally is being updated. Thank you, Rick. He's just updated. It's now $18,585. Wouldn't it be great if we could click that over to 19,000 before 7 o'clock? So if you could be part of that, if you could help us with that, doesn't matter how little or how much it is, 4367 4042. Now then, opposite me is sitting Graeme Blaiklock. And Graeme's from the All Saints Church, the Anglican Church, at the entrance. But yeah, he's not just from there. There's a lot of strings to your bow, Graeme.
There are rather
a lot of strings. Let me just go through a few of them. Well, we'll talk about as many as we can. Now, regular listeners here on Rhema Central Coast, they will be familiar with Michael Youssef. He does that Leading the Way program. I'm sure if they can't remember the name, they'll be very familiar with his very distinctive voice. But you have a connection with Michael Youssef, don't you?
Yes, by the grace of God and by being in the right spot at the right time, I became the founding chairman of Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef back in the year 2000. And he's a very good friend. And so is the ministry, and you are too, because if it wasn't for your station and stations like yours, we, Leading the Way, wouldn't be able to broadcast 3,000 times a week.
Is that it? 3,000 times a week?
3,000.
And it's heard across the world, isn't it?
Of course.
It's a sort of international ministry.
Very much.
Tell us a little bit about Michael Youssef.
He's a great friend, and a couple of years younger than I am. Just turned 70.
He's 21, 22?
Just turned 70, and he just turned 70. And he's an Egyptian who grew up in Egypt and then managed to get to Australia and was educated at Moore College and met his beautiful wife Elizabeth, and they then stayed in Australia for a while where the children were born, and then headed off up to America, where Dr. Youssef and his wife and some very good friends started the Church of the Apostles in Atlanta, which is a very successful church.
Is it one of those big American mega churches, is it?
Not, well, it's sort of different in that, I suppose you could say that in a way. There's about 3,000 members. The auditorium will hold about that many.
Wow.
And the beauty of it was that Dr. Youssef was given the money to build it and the car park behind it. And then God opened the doors for this radio ministry, and the auditorium that was built is just perfect for recording television. He didn't expect that to happen. He didn't even expect radio to happen, but as God opened the doors, he simply walked through them. He hasn't pushed any doors open. It's all been the will of God. Yeah, it's just open for him.
In fact, I think I read a little bit about him one time. He didn't really expect to get out of Egypt, did he? But he miraculously found, again, God opened the exit door for him, if you like. And
that was a miracle in itself.
It was, wasn't it? So how did you say you were in the right place at the right time? How so?
Well, Dr. Youssef is a very generous man. By the way, he doesn't take one red cent from Leading the Way. Everything that all of his time is donated, his books are donated, all of his resources are donated. He gets paid by Church of the Apostles. The last book that he just printed brought $500,000 US into the ministry. He doesn't touch a red cent. Wow. Anyhow, he was in Australia visiting his mother-in-law, as they did every year, in October in 1998, and he came in to Australian opal cutters.
Let me just stop that. Sorry about that, Graeme. Carry on.
That's all right. He walked into Australian opal cutters and wanted to buy a gift for one of his board members. And he said, Blaiklock, that's an interesting name. I think I know that name. I said, you probably know it because of my uncle, Professor Blaiklock, Professor Ian Blaiklock, who wrote lots of books. He said, that's right. He had actually escorted him around Sydney a few years before when Professor Blaiklock visited Moore College and Sydney to do some work. And so we got talking about his ministry, and he left me something in 1998 to listen to, and a book. And he came back again in October 1999, and he said, "What did you think of my message?" I said, "I just love the good sound doctrine." At the time, I was really quite confused about, doctrine. I must say I'd been involved in some peripheral sort of some extreme groups, and there were some extremities going on. And I said, "I love your doctrine because it so avoids all the extremes, and it just stays right in the middle, and it's just so sound." I said, "You know what? Australia really needs this message.
They need to hear it."
Yeah. He said, "So why don't you set it up?"
There's a challenge.
So I said, "Because I'm a jeweler."
Good answer.
He said, "We can help." And boy, he helped, and it took off. And now we're broadcasting in over 600 radio stations, and we've got Channel 9, 2 or 9 Gem and 7 Gem, and one other that's in the country, a regional one.
Oh yes, I know those.
Yeah.
Win, is it? Or
Win TV.
Yeah.
And we're still negotiating for more TV time now.
You say you were in the right place at the right time, but I rather suspect God put you both in that place at that time.
I totally agree, because I was a bit fed up with supporting the people that I was supporting at the time. And I said, "Lord, give me somebody really legitimate to support."
Yeah.
And literally within 2 weeks, Dr. Youssef walked in the door.
So next time our listeners hear that ministry on Rhema, the Leading the Way ministry with Dr. Michael Youssef, they can think back to this conversation and that connection that you had. You say you were a jeweler is that by profession?
Well, I'm a wholesale jewellery salesman. That's what I've done all my life. And we had Australian opal cutters. My son and I have Australian opal cutters and Australian pearl divers. Oh. So we specialise in opals and pearls. In fact, the next year that he came back, he bought a pearl for the wife of the same man that he bought the opal for on the first trip.
So you obviously, for him to come into your place of business, that would be somewhere in Sydney. You have offices there.
Yeah, we're right on the corner. Yeah, right on the corner of Park and Pitt Street, up on the third floor,
right,
above Lowe's.
Yes,
it's still there. Welcome to come, anybody.
Can I just interrupt now?
I'll just tell the listeners who this is. Frank, one of our great volunteers, who's been doing sterling work on the phones all afternoon. So yeah, Frank's. You've got a question for?
Yes, I've got a question. Just a statement. I mean, Michael Youssef is one of my favourite programs. There's a few of us, but it's quite good.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's on TV. The one that you're thinking of is probably 7-2.
7-2 at 8. Let me think. 7:30.
At 7:30.
And 9-2 at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Yeah. So you said you're good friends with him. So you're in regular contact?
Oh, very regular contact. In fact, just a couple of months ago, I was in his home, and I interviewed him for a program that we're going to air here.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later.
That'll be good.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a teaser for the listeners. We'll come back to that shortly. It's probably a good idea if we break for a little bit more music, because there are still other strings to your bow that we haven't even touched on yet, Graeme. So we'll break for some music. Let's hear from Hillsong Young and Free with Let Go, and then we'll come back. It's 18 minutes to 7 o'clock here on 94.9. We're talking to Graeme Blaiklock. Also in the studio, I've got Frank, one of our great volunteers here. Frank was telling us, this is right, isn't it, Frank, that you actually taped Michael Youssef, because the time it's broadcast live doesn't really fit with you. So you tape his talk.
Yes, I do. Saturday night before I go to bed, I put the tape on, and away she goes for Sunday morning. Reason being is, I shouldn't say this, but I like to have a bit of a sleep in on Sunday, so I don't get up early. So Saturday night I set the tape, and that's it. Yeah.
Well, lucky you, I'm still on the board of Leading the Way, and I want to make sure that they come on at the right time and they run through. Because sometimes they
run late.
But
I've noticed that if programs run late, it throws the taping off, and you get half a program or no program, but it's been fairly good, actually.
Well, that's a great thing to do, but you can also go to ltw.org and you can see all of the sermons, all of the series. At the moment it's Victory, Valley to the Victory, and I think this morning went back for some reason to episode 3. I'm not sure why. I have to find that out.
So all those talks are on that website?
They're all on the website.
LTW for Leading the Way.org?
ltw.org, and they're all there.
Oh, they are, Frank.
Yeah.
There you go, eh?
Put the tape recorder away, all that ancient technology, throw it out now. Get on
And go to the net.
Exactly. We were talking off air, and Graeme was mentioning to me that there's, out of the Leading the Way ministry, another recent ministry has sort of been created, which is really designed to help persecuted Christians.
Yeah. Well, we had it joined with Leading the Way, Help the Persecuted was part of Leading the Way, and Joshua Youssef, Michael Youssef's oldest son, runs it, and we've actually separated them now into two different ministries, and while Help the Persecuted has been going for years, we had an inaugural relaunch in Washington on March the 15th, and Joshua Youssef is a very good friend, well, I can say a very good friend of a board member who used to be the Chief of Staff until he finished that job in December for Mike Pence, the Vice President. So he introduced, Nick Ayers introduced Joshua Youssef to Mike Pence, and they became friends. They played golf together, and Mike Pence volunteered to speak at our inaugural launch that weekend, March the 15th. So he spoke very passionately about the mission and had his passion for the persecuted Christians coming from the Middle East, and promised full support. Good. And we had a great launch that weekend. The Geddes came and sang, the Geddes, In Christ Alone. They came and sang their repertoire of songs. Just a wonderful weekend. I was so blessed to be there.
We take being able to get up on a Sunday morning, go to church and worship freely, we take it very much for granted now.
Oh, we do.
We don't realise it is a privilege. Absolutely. And it's a privilege that many Christians in many parts of the world, they can be killed for what we do and just don't think about.
Totally. Oh, and to hear the testimonies of the people coming from the ground in Jordan and in Iraq and in Syria and Lebanon, and hear the testimonies of how they'd escaped with their lives and have been helped by Help the Persecuted. And even the people that work back there for us now are people whose lives were severely threatened, and they're now working for us as volunteers, passionate Christians.
I think I read last year that it's not something that's dying out. There are more Christians being persecuted and killed for their faith in 2018 than any other time in history.
It's the truth. 245 million Christians wake up every morning not knowing whether they will make it to bed at night.
245 million.
Yeah. However, on the plus side, because of this testimony, there's more Muslims come to Christ in the last 15 years than in the last 15 centuries, because they're thinking. In fact, one of our people testified at that weekend. Thank God for ISIS, because if I hadn't seen what they do and what its potential is, I would never have wanted to come to Christ.
Been a biggest recruiting sergeant for the Christians.
Almost is.
And in fact, the church is growing in those countries, isn't it? Doesn't matter. Across the world, countries of persecution, the church is really growing.
Thanks be to God. We've mentioned the Gideons. You're also involved in the Gideons, Graeme?
Yes, I've been a Gideon for years, and Gideons are great. We get little pocket workers' testaments into schools where Frank teaches, and we were over at the Lakes Grammar last week. It's a wonderful ministry. We love the Gideons.
I was given a copy of the Psalms in the New Testament in the 60s as a kid at school, sort of thing. I've still got it at home, sort of thing. It was the King James version. Is that still the version you're using?
No.
That's English, the New English. English,
more modern
English Standard, I think it is. Yeah.
Fair enough. But that's quite an active branch here on the Central Coast of the Gideons, isn't there?
There's a great branch here of the Gideons. We've got the national president is part of one of our members.
State president.
State president,
yeah.
State president. I hate to exaggerate. State president.
Yeah.
And I must say, as Frank would agree, please, if you're a church, let us come and tell you about the work. And anyhow, that's what we're always looking for.
Yeah,
and
you were at my church about 2 months ago. So.
Okay. Good.
So one question I've been sort of longing to ask Gideon, really, with the prevalence of smartphones, and I can get so many sort of Bible translations on my smartphone, is there really a role to be handing out hard copies of the Bible to school kids these days?
I think so, because that little pocket Workers' Testament has got a great little index in the front. If you're depressed, if you're desperate, if you're lonely, you go straight to that index. And that really shows right away the benefit of having the Word of God. A child can open it, go to the index, if they are depressed, for instance, and see 3 scriptures that'll tell them how to get over it and how to deal with it.
And just on that too, yes, we do have an app that you can download.
Oh, Gideons have their own app.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know what it is because I'm old school. I use books, not app. But there is an app. So if you go to the website, I think you can download it. There's some way you can download it anyway.
So old fogies like you and me were catered for, but the millennials have got their app as well.
They've got their apps as well.
You've covered all the bases there.
Yep.
Yeah. Look, and there's some very exciting news we wanted to talk to Graeme about, and it affects Rhema Central Coast because I hope I'm not letting the cat out of the bag here. You hope to be making some programs for us here at Rhema Central Coast.
Yes. Rick Broom and Evan Knox asked me last year, if we gave you a mic, they said, what would you do with it? I'd said, I'd like to put the Christian worldview out on the airwaves because I really don't think it gets a good hearing. So they said, okay, you've got an hour program. We'll work out when we go. And at the moment, the thinking is that it'll be about this time on a Sunday and also overnight sometime. So I've been out there and I've interviewed 50 people now.
Gosh.
Just got to now edit the interviews, including Dr. Michael Youssef, some great, I didn't get Mike Pence, but
next time, get in.
And people like, getting mental, George Rodriguez, who was recently retired as the BGEA CEO, Dr. Beng Yo, he's the CEO North Africa and Eastern Europe of the World Vision. Used to be the CEO of Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef.
Yes.
A brilliant man, brilliant testimony. Gary Cobb, who's the international trainer for the Christian Life and Witness course, goes everywhere before Will and Franklin Graham and teaches the Christian Life and Witness course. What a powerful testimony. I've got to sometimes hold back the tears when I hear the testimonies of people. You ask people their testimony.
These are
it's
big
just
names
amazing.
as well, aren't they?
And there's 50, and I'm having a little mental breakdown here, not mental block, I should say, about who else I'm in. Yeah. But I am organising to interview Will Graeme this week. As
Billy Graham's
grandson.
Yeah, because it's Franklin and then...
Yeah, he's Franklin's son.
Yes.
Franklin's son. And frankly, he preaches like Billy Graham, he looks like Billy Graham, and if there's ever going to be a successor to Billy Graham, it'll be Will Graeme. Another wonderful testimony. He's here this week with.
So he's in Australia or coming out to Australia.
He'll be arriving this week, and he'll be off on Friday. He'll be off to Perth and then down to Hobart, where they're going to have another outreach. He has great outreaches.
Can I ask, for somebody who's not involved in the sort of, those levels of the church, what do you do? Do you just ring these people up and say, I believe you come to Australia, can I sort of stick a mic in your face and ask questions? Or how do you arrange these things?
I'd like to say to people that are, who are called to assist ministries, that there are great benefits in assisting ministries. And of course it's God's resources, and you simply ask God to give you the resources, and He gives you the resources, and then you become great friends of the ministries that you assist. And I can call myself a very good friend of Will Graeme. He's invited me, and at his expense I've stayed at the Cove in North Carolina. What a wonderful experience that was. I've managed to introduce Will to Michael Youssef, and now they exchange pulpits with each other.
That's terrific, isn't it? To think that you've had a part in linking those two people together, and they're now sort of bouncing ideas off each other.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Absolutely, and at great benefit, I must say.
Yeah.
But look, you've just got to be available. And it started back there in 1998 when I said, Lord, just give me a ministry to support that you really want supported. And if you believe that, God will open the doors for you. It's just, I mean, I can say that it's only been God opening the doors.
You feel that passionately?
Totally, yeah. Totally.
That this is God's work, and it's God that's arranging these interviews and putting you in the right place at the right time.
I mean, the sovereignty of God, I heard Dr. Youssef preach it this morning.
Yeah.
He said it's the most comforting doctrine that's in the Bible. God's in control.
Finally, Graeme, can I ask you where you see Christian radio stations like Rhema Central Coast fitting into this sort of this idea of winning people for Christ, and just letting people know that, you know, life with Jesus in is a lot better than life without Jesus.
Absolutely.
What's the role of Christian radio in the 2000s?
Really the right hand of God, or the handmaiden of God, because you put the message out there on the airwaves, and then God is the one who gets them to turn the dial at the right time and win them. And people who would probably not listen to their Christian neighbours or their Christian family, but can be convicted, and it just goes through the roof. It comes into the car. It's so vital. It's such a vital ministry.
And people who wouldn't accept an invitation to church might just find us on a radio dial in their car.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's such a great opportunity for God and for the gospel.
So we've just got to be, as a station, faithful and keep planting the seed, and then leave the watering and the nurturing of that seed to God and to other people that he has working for him.
Absolutely, and he will do that. They will run into people that can take them further.
Look, Graeme, we're coming up to 7 o'clock. It's been an absolute delight talking to you. I'm really excited about these 50 interviews that you've got lined up. Have we got a title or a name of that programme yet?
This is just going to be called Out and About.
Out and About with Graeme.
I don't know, just be out and about, and the host will be Graeme Blaiklock.
Look, Graeme, it's been a delight speaking to you. It's fascinating learning of all these sort of ministries that you've had, been involved with, and it's, be careful what we ask God for. You just asked him for a simple little ministry, and
that's right.
He sort of blessed you abundantly.
He has.
Yeah. Let's have some music. It's John Phillips with Faith.